Hey guys, welcome back to more Just No Mother-in-Law stories. In this video, my psycho mother-in-law demanded that we give her our child and insisted that we don't deserve to have kids. Here is what happened. So I am a train driver in the UK. Weekday commuters in busy periods are fine, they know what they are doing and where they are going. However, weekenders are another story. They rock up and have no idea where they are going and act indignant when we tell them the route they want to take is full of engineering works. However, the worst is summer holiday teenagers. It's school holidays at the moment here in the UK, so they're just pissing around for the fun of it. Last week I had one teenage girl block a set of doors from closing. I did my usual PA spiel of, you might not have anywhere to go, but the other 100 people or so on board want to get home or go to work. This usually gets the ones bothered the most to get up and see what's going on, but it wasn't enough for this girl. I went back and asked her what the problem was, and she remained silent and refused to look at anyone, but looked at me and said, "Get the police then." In the end, police were called and we waited on the platform for 40 minutes for them to arrive and take her away. Last night it was the second last stop before I was to take the train empty back to the depot and go home after a 9-hour shift. I was done. I tried to close the doors and they wouldn't lock fully, tried again a few times and then saw it was the door behind me. I got out of my cab and saw it was the same girl. "Oh, you were the same girl that held up my train for 40 minutes last week?" "No, it wasn't me." It was though. Unbeknownst to her, I'd been told over the radio to expect delays into the terminus station as they were dealing with an incident and police were there. I just said to her, "Listen, I know it was you. It's my last train of the night and I want to go home on time. So you can either shut up and sit down, I will drag you out, or I can get the police to come deal with you." She obviously remembered police coming the week before, so went and sat down. Unbeknownst to her, I used the 6-minute journey time between that station and terminus station to call the signaler and request police assistance on arrival. When I pulled in, there were 6 police officers waiting for us. I did not open the doors and let the police in through my cab door and pointed her out. The fish mouth on her was priceless as I said, "You told me to call the police." And the next one is another malicious compliance story. So, a group of around a dozen of us went to a curry restaurant in the high street of a town in the UK. There was only one other table occupied on what should have been a busy Saturday night. We ordered our starters and main courses without issue. After a very long time, at least half an hour later, some food started appearing from the kitchen. A couple of starters for some people, some mains for others who hadn't gotten their starters yet. About half of us had food of some kind at this point. However, the waiter then decided to inform us that some dishes were not available that night. The food that did come out was terrible and in some cases actually cold. Meanwhile, the other table took the opportunity of a quiet moment in the restaurant to just walk out the door, leaving untouched food on the table and not paying. To be honest, that was a step too far in my book, but irrelevant to us. Anyway, disgusted by the food situation, we offered to pay £10 per person to abandon the meal. This was quite reasonable given the quantity of food that had come out. The manager refused though and tried to make us pay for the entire meal, even though we had not even received half of it, nor would we ever get some dishes as they were not even available. I estimate it should have cost around £15 per head. At this point he decided to lock the door of the restaurant and threatened to call the police on us. We complied. "Please do," we replied. The police were there in minutes, walking in through the now unlocked door. They talked to us and then talked to the manager, then came back to us and said, "How about you offer the restaurant £5 per person to end the situation?" The officer suggested. Everybody agreed, including the manager who pretty much now had no choice. So we paid up half our original offer and left. The restaurant closed permanently sometime later. And yeah, ripe stars, to be honest, I'm always sad when I see restaurants closed because it's such a difficult industry to be successful in. But I would say in this case it was deserved and I'm glad that restaurant does not exist anymore. Have you ever been to a restaurant that was as awful as this one? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, the next one is the title story and it starts like this. I'm a bit hesitant to say this, but I know there's a lot of you people out there who can relate to this. So here it goes. I'm 33 years old and I love my husband to death. We've been married almost 5 years, and the whole time his mother, my mother-in-law, MIL, Judy, just would not give up on begging us to have kids so she could have grandchildren. She raised 3 healthy boys and gave them love and attention and put them through college, yada yada, and now she is an empty nester, so the harassment just came in like unchecked this past year. Don't get me wrong, I love her to death, but this past year has been a whirlwind just trying to keep her in check, if you know what I mean. We had a good relationship up until this point. We would go out for lunch, talk about our future plans, and nowhere did kids ever come up. But I don't know what bee got in her bonnet, because lately she's been head-on asking me and Tommy for all the wrong reasons, saying, if you don't have kids you might get too old and it will be too late. And if I were you, I would try now because everything is getting more expensive. To, I'm getting older so I want grandkids before I die. You know, the typical entitled mother-in-law stuff you hear all the time. But it was getting out of hand to a point where we seriously needed to reevaluate her mental state. So we finally had a kid a while back, and ever since this year, she has been going non-stop saying crazy stuff like, I deserve this kid because I have nothing else to do. And you and Tommy work all the time, so that's almost like child abuse, not paying attention and taking care of the baby. It got to a point where I screamed in a pillow one morning after we had our second child because the threats and the constant harassment got out of hand. One Saturday when Tommy was out watering the lawn, the entitled Karen, aka my mother-in-law, came over and started making demands that we give her our firstborn because little Jessica needed more time for mommy and she could take Timmy off our hands if we just give him up. I'm like, hell no, what does this conniving wench want? She claims that she's bored and that she has all this free time. And sure enough she does, because she started to badger us every day almost. She lives a few miles down the road and knocks on our door. Sometimes we'd be sleeping and she would constantly ring the doorbell. She would leave endless voicemails, texts and notes that would hint that she is going out and buying all this stuff for Timmy because he would be mine one day. After a while, Tommy and I got really tired of it. She would come banging on our door each day, leave notes on our car, and generally harass us mentally to a point where it got so exhausting that I could not even breastfeed Jessica, nor go to work and deal with the heavy workload of having to rear 2 children and deal with a psychotic mother-in-law. But I will never forget the one Saturday she stood up to me in my face and told me, you don't deserve to have children, because you're a lazy and bad parent that doesn't even feed them nutritious meals and instead get them food at the dollar store. I slammed the door in her face and she drove off, but she continued to berate me over the phone and leave nasty voicemail messages and texts saying things like, I'm gonna tell my lady friends what they think I should do, and I'm going to let them know that this is wrong of you both. You should just give me Timmy and leave it at that. You both cannot raise him like I can. And then it got even worse. As if the whole world just collided on me and the fact that I was already tired from work, Judy decides to go even a step further and created lies and tell my husband that I'm feeding Timmy horrible foods that are expired. He is vegan, so he likes to make sure I'm cooking properly and using the best ingredients possible, and that I'm not breastfeeding the right way to Jessica, and that my work is toxic and I need to quit that job, or else the kids will turn out like me, or some BS like that. I'm just tired of her nonsense. Tommy and I have gotten in more frequent fights surrounding his mother, and truth be told, I'm tired of it. Not sure what to do at this point, and every time we go out, the neighbors think we are crazy when we get in our car because she yells and berates us both that we are bad parents and that we don't know how to raise a kid properly. I even saw one of my older neighbors, who used to be so sweet to me, shake her head at me as I got in the car one morning for work. Our neighborly relationship has changed, I feel, due to my mother-in-law. I just don't know how I can get her off our backs. I mean, I'm married to this man and he's my husband, but it's just gotten out of control to a point that I want to put her on a lease. And I would rather have that on her than on my own kid, if you catch my drift. Because she has just gotten way out of hand. And by the way, Ripe Stars, I'm curious if OP meant to say on a leash instead of on a lease. Because that is what this entitled mother-in-law would rather deserve. Anyway, so this past Saturday she came over again, and she started yelling and cussing as usual. She got even more irate and started bad-mouthing us again. One of the neighbors heard and called the cops. They showed up and we talked with them. Tommy tried to calm the situation down. The cop even asked if she was on any meds and we said no, she is just insane. And the cops started laughing. But he told us that since she did not commit a crime yet, we cannot press any charges. Now we are thinking of actually moving to another city all because of this, and Tommy is in agreement. But I asked the police officer if we could get a restraining order, and he said that we would have to talk with a lawyer about it. So we went down to the local attorney's office and filed a report with them. We had a big consultation and they recommended that we look into getting protection against her because we really started to fear that she might do some collateral damage or something. She has come over and disturbed the peace, and one neighbor claimed that she almost hit her car while driving off. It was a total mess. Anyway, finally, we got it in place and Judy sure enough comes back over screaming again. We told her we have a restraining order now and this takes effect immediately. She was told by the police the other day, but she claims they never came and told her, and now we are even more fearful and it's starting to get out of hand. Anyway, we called the police again when she came and they showed up, looked it up on her file, and sure enough the restraining order in effect. They just told her to back off and go home, or else they could take her to jail. She cussed at us and stormed off, Timmy started crying, and Tommy drove off after her after telling the police, "I'm going to have a word with her." The cops thought it was agreeable that he do that, but it could tamper a little with the restraining order. So he ended up calling her anyway while they were there and said, "Look mom, you gotta stop this or else we will cut you off entirely. You've gone too far in asking us to give our kid to you." The cops were standing there when he called and it was the most crazy thing I've ever experienced. Finally though, she backed down and we started making plans to get out of town with our kids because this psycho mother-in-law was out of hand and just plain broke every boundary in our book. It even got to a point where we had to move and we are now safer and more congenial with how we go about handling stuff like this, but for anyone out there who has a crazy Karen mother-in-law in your life, just seek help because these people are everywhere, even in your own family, and it would make your life easier if you just cut ties with them like we did. They need to wake up and realize all the crap they've done to mess up relationships and families. Needless to say, we are safe and secure now and happy. Timmy is doing fine and Jessica is going to be a great woman someday because I know they are raised by us and have a good steady foundation. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I'm happy that OP went no contact in the end. However, it seemed in the beginning that the husband was a little spineless, and I wouldn't say that even in the end he got a titanium spine or something, but honestly there's not too much complaint because as I said, they went no contact in the end. If you would have been in the same situation, would you have gone no contact earlier? Let us know in the comments. The next one is titled Nightmare Home / Landlord, posted by user YesBoys on r/Ripe Stories. So a little bit of backstory for this one. I was living with my mom after I got kicked out of my foster carer's house for reasons that are not even clear to me. My mom was abusive and basically took half of my wages that I was earning, which doubled her monthly income for everything included: rent, water, electricity, gas, food, toiletries, etc. and basically refused to pay for any of that with my money and just spent it on herself. I wanted to leave home, so I set about looking for a nice place to rent that I could afford. I found a nice place that was in a good area, close to a high street, shops, etc. and I applied to rent there. I immediately got accepted because the city I live in is mostly dominated by students of the local university and I was in full-time employment and therefore more than able to pay the rent. I used to call this place a flat, but I would barely call it that because it was literally one room, living room and bedroom, and a very small kitchen and a very small bathroom. There was not even any space for a washing machine or a dryer, nor was there any plumbing for one. I actually spoke to my boss at work about this. I worked for a construction company, and she was not entirely sure that it was legal to not physically have space for a washing machine. Anyway, it was my first own place and I was over the moon that I had a place to call my own home. Fast forward about 2 or 3 months, the first rat infestation begins. I come home from work one day and noticed my bread was chewed up. At first I thought it had melted somehow, because the packaging of the bread was all shredded and I kept my bread on top of the microwave as I had no place to put a bread bin. I thought that somehow the microwave might have malfunctioned and caused the bread on top of it to melt, but upon further inspection, the bread itself was ripped up and I quickly realized it was some kind of rodent that had caused this. A couple of days later I saw a rat running across my kitchen floor behind the cooker and then disappearing. I moved the cooker out of the way and could see that there was a massive hole in the skirting boards where rats had burrowed their way into the flat. I sealed it up with silicone sealant, hoping that it would stop the rats from coming in anymore. Well, obviously this did not work. They created more holes in the walls and skirting boards and door frames to burrow their way into my flat. I contacted the landlord and told him about this, and they sent the cheapest exterminator they could find, who basically just recommended that I put down rat traps and then left. I was on my own at this point, and I bought rat traps and covered all of the holes that I had made. I caught several rats with the rat traps, and after that everything went quiet. For a few months everything was fine, no sign of any rats or anything that was unusual, but then came the second wave. So this time they made even more holes in the walls and the door frames, and I had rats running through my flat in every room. My girlfriend at the time even woke up to a rat on top of her whilst I was at work. I'm shocked she actually stayed with me from that point. When I contacted the landlord again, he basically said that it was my problem because the exterminator had already been there, and it must be something to do with me or the way I'm maintaining the flat that has caused them to come back. Well, the thing is that I kept my flat spotlessly clean. It was my first own place and I was incredibly proud of it. I kept it in immaculate condition 24/7, and there was never any food left out, especially after the first incident with the rats. I was at a complete loss on what to do. In total I had 5 separate occasions where I would get rats in the flat and then it would die down again after catching a few and getting rid of them. Anyway, later down the line I had a property inspection. They pointed out all of the holes in the walls and skirting boards and door frames and claimed that I was neglecting the property and damaging it. Shortly after, they gave me an eviction notice and demanded that I left the property within 30 days, so I decided to just leave before the 30 days was up because it was a complete lost cause, and I would rather the landlord deal with the rat problem, to be honest, than me having to live with them. I ended up moving in with a friend from work and I'm currently living with him now. So just to rub salt in the wound, the landlord claimed on the deposit and got the full deposit back because of damages to the property. This is not an am I the a-hole question because I know for a fact that I'm not the a-hole, but I just wanted to know people's opinions on this. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. When I first moved into my current neighborhood, the HOA was perfectly fine, and since I couldn't find a place that was not an HOA, my husband and I decided to move in. Being one of the only black families in the area, it was a little weird at first because it was obvious that some people did not think that we belonged or just did not want us there. It was not until years later when the HOA board changed around there was somebody on there that was blatantly racist. I've had the displeasure of speaking to her on numerous occasions, and everything she says ranges from subtle racism to it being right out in the open. She would ask me things if I was on food stamps and telling me there are plenty of good jobs driving buses or working at a supermarket, never seeming to listen when I told her that I was a teacher with a master's degree. All she would see is the color of my skin and make a negative assumption based on solely that. Even telling me that I should consider just selling the house and naming other areas within the county she thinks I would be happier in. I don't want to say too much and give away my location, but all of those areas are very low income with a very high minority population. The only other thing about Karen worth mentioning is that she is a vegan and thinks the entire neighborhood should take a stand against the meat industry. Even wanting local stores to stop stocking products and only give plant-based alternatives. She never got the support behind her, but was determined that she could get the HOA to make rules against animal products based on her personal position. I have nothing against people who don't eat meat, I just don't personally follow in that mentality. In fact, in my family when something big happens, we like to throw a barbecue and invite over family and friends. Now this one day, it was my daughter's high school graduation and we wanted to have a big party and celebrate. She had all her friends over and we were just having an amazing time eating and celebrating. HOA rules say that outdoor parties are allowed as long as the noise level drops by 10 PM. This was like lunchtime since the ceremony was at like 10 AM. I guess with all the excitement I couldn't say I was surprised to see that Karen had shown up to see what it was all about. I was not happy to see her, but I was hoping that a short conversation could get her to leave. Me just demanding it right off the bat could have caused more of a confrontation. That was until she opened her mouth. Karen, there are a lot of people here. I hope you are not having a gang meeting or something out in the open. Me, what the hell kind of thing is that to say? Do you accuse all parties of being gang related? Or is it just the black families? Karen, I'm not racist. It just looked gang related. Me, a bunch of teenage girls in dresses look like a gang? There are about 3 other graduation parties in the neighborhood. And I know that you did not accuse them of being a gang. Karen, well, they are not outside making a commotion. Me, how is this a commotion? We just want to celebrate so you can just leave us alone and let us get back to our barbecue. I guess that was the wrong thing to say, because the moment she heard barbecue, it was like the fire moved from the grill to her eyes. I don't want to repeat the things that she started saying, because it was basically an anti-meat tirade and how we were all horrible people and ruining the world because of what we were eating. I wanted her away from my house and especially away from all the kids. I tried to lead her away from the property, but she pulled out pepper spray and point blank unloaded it into my face. I was on the ground screaming and unable to even open my eyes because of it all. I just heard screaming all around me and was totally lost until the police came with EMTs, who were able to wash out my eyes so I could see what was going on. All of the kids were now inside the house because they were terrified after what Karen had done to me. She, on the other hand, was using her position in the HOA as some kind of leverage to try and get the police to side with her. She was explaining that a barbecue in this neighborhood was illegal because they were all meant to be vegan, then claimed that I assaulted her and she had to defend herself from me. I just need to mention that she was so dumb that she called me in front of black cops no less than a ghetto animal, and that was not winning her any favors. The police asked me if I wanted to press assault charges against her, and I told them yes. Karen was appalled that she was not the one pressing charges and having me arrested instead, reminding the cops that she was part of the HOA and only trying to stop us from destroying the neighborhood. Luckily, she was taken away from them, so it was safe for the kids to come back outside and try to continue having fun. After all of that drama, the party was kind of dead and a lot of kids wanted to go home after seeing this. I hated that on a special day my daughter had to witness how bad racism can get right in front of her. I know that most of you reading want to find out what happened to Karen next more than what happened with the party and my family. Well, she was charged with the assault against me and instead of taking a deal ended up pleading not guilty. That was a bad idea because her entire defense was being scared of me because I was black and blah blah racist crap. Also again trying to claim that I was the one doing something illegal by having a barbecue. She couldn't actually show any proof the HOA claimed it was illegal because nobody was gonna help her pass that as a rule. It just did not make any sense and there was no way to enforce it. She was found guilty for the assault and put under house arrest plus probation plus community service. Especially the judge wanted her to do service in those areas she mentioned, thinking I should be living in. While jail might have been nice, she might actually learn something having to be surrounded by black people and realizing that they are just people too. Also, it should be obvious, but I'll mention that she was no longer welcome on the HOA board and they of course denied knowing that she was racist, and if they knew, she would have never been given power. We still celebrate barbecues despite what she did, and so far, that was our only issue. Other neighbors were a little subtly racist, but nothing compared to Karen. They were not gonna bother showing up and pepper spraying me in the face at least. They were more the stay-at-home people and just complain within their family type of people. All I care about is being able to have a nice time with family and not worry about her showing back up again. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again tomorrow.